Okay, we've seen a million of these games with the Minnesota Vikings against Aaron Rodgers specifically, but this one might feel different than what you're used to. Let me explain on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. So much stuff to go over previewing the Vikings-Steelers game in Dublin, Ireland, Croke Park. We have the Zoever under, where we'll look at some betting lines. We have your bold predictions. I think the most bold predictions I've ever read out. I will read out. You guys did such a great job. I couldn't bear to cut any more of them, so that one's going to be awesome. But before we get into any of that, I want to speak schematically a little bit about the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Look, we're super used to Aaron Rodgers as Vikings fans. Used to play him twice a year for forever. Even played him once last year in London as with the Jets. We know how Aaron Rodgers plays, right? How he's so good at getting rid of the ball, how he beats blitzes. We know these things about Aaron Rodgers because we've been watching it for a long, long time. With like Vikings fans might as well be like the Vikings might as well be a divisional matchup for Aaron Rodgers because they know him. Even the ones that joined in the last couple of years when Rodgers hasn't been in Green Bay, they still got guys like Harrison Smith there telling them what's what against Aaron Rodgers. And plus they all played him last year. But that offense last year and the ones he did in Green Bay, the Jets offense last year was very much trying to recreate Green Bay, was trying to essentially find openings to push the ball down the field, use leverage. This is like what, if you really want to go back, this is what like Mike McCarthy did with way back when he was with the Jets. And I think Matt LaFleur has done it in his own way, but really what he was trying to do was just find good leverage balls that Aaron Rodgers could hit. That was like the whole point of it, was lure them into man-to-man. I mean, if it's zones, Rodgers is going to destroy you. So you're probably going to get a lot of man-to-man. And especially with some Packers teams that didn't have the most receiver talent, like you would go man-to-man. And you could do that a little bit against the Jets too, even as you know, Mike Williams and Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard were no longer the guys they were, and Garrett Wilson was having a weird down year. Like, And what you would hope with Aaron Rodgers is that you're getting these like leverage balls that like it's one-on-one, maybe sticky coverage, but the corner is to the inside and Rodgers can place the ball to the outside and still make it work, right? These back shoulder fades that you probably remember being really, really annoyed by as Devontae Adams makes the adjustment and gets the catch, right? This is the stuff we think of with Aaron Rodgers. This is not where we are at anymore with the Steelers. And I think that roster building wise, that was the vision we could all kind of imagine. Oh, you got DK Metcalf. Okay, well, let's just try to get him one-on-one and see if Aaron Rodgers can place the ball where only DK Metcalf can get it, give him an advantage in a contested catch situation. And he's so good at those that with an advantage, it should be unstoppable. I feel like that's the idea. That isn't really what's happening. There's some of that. But when I looked at like comparing the Jets Aaron Rodgers offense to the Steelers Aaron Rodgers offense and like the kind of underlying schematic stats about like time to throw and ADOT and stuff like that, personnel usage, it's a much different world. And what Arthur Smith is doing with the Steelers plays kind of directly into Brian Flores' hands. It is sort of exactly the kind of offense that Flores wants to go against, not necessarily the kind of personnel that the Vikings personnel is meant to go against. The Steelers play big, much like the Falcons wanted to, and we saw how that went in the run game. So this is going to be a lot harder. Thing is, the Bengals tried to go big on the Vikings too, and they couldn't run the ball worth a damn. So like they had three tight ends out there a ton, and tried to like victimize Dallas Turner with tight ends and got punished really bad. I talked about that at length on Wednesday's show and in a Patreon video at patreon.com/LoopRunNFL. But like, if you're an everydayer and you listen to the crossover yesterday, that's basically what Christopher Carter was saying. The whole thesis of the Steelers is this year. You go three tight ends and DK Metcalf. You go big. You throw high passes in the red zone. You run the ball. They want to run the ball. Thing is, their run game has been, we'll call it decent. It's been average. For how much they commit to it schematically and personnel wise, it hasn't really paid off to be this like world-beating grind them out run game. And in fact, the Vikings have had a more productive run game this year. To give you a sense of perspective, it's been less productive than the Vikings, despite the fact that they use 3 tight ends way more and like bigger personnel way more. And what happens is when you put your bigs out there, the other guys put their bigs out there, right? So here's what happens. The Steelers use 13 and 23 personnel. That's 3 tight end packages with either 1 or 2 running backs, like a ton, right? Like they actually use I think like 5% 23 personnel, which is a ton because it's such a niche formation, a formation with no receivers, right? And they actually use that quite a bit. So they want to do that, condense inline, and essentially play rugby. The Vikings will answer that with as much size as they can get out there. The thing is, that is maybe going to require a lot of beef and a lot of holding your point, holding up at the point of attack. And I don't know how easy it's going to be when you have all those extra skill players out there in the blocking to split up the double teams and do what you did against Cincinnati, which is get Jalen Redmond one-on-one with a guard that's struggling, or get Jonathan Allen one-on-one if you can swing that, or get one of the edges one-on-one. It's going to be a lot harder to get an O-line isolated without any help. The whole point of putting all those skill players there is to give those guys the help that they need and get those wins up front. And then eventually you can hopefully get the angles there, just start driving because the Steelers are just going to be bigger than the Vikings, and then move. This is my chief concern is with Jalen Warren in the run game, right? And a repeat of Atlanta potentially happening in a way that I don't think Cincinnati was capable of replicating, even though they tried. I am comforted that the Steelers haven't been as good at that, but the other side of this coin, the pass game, sort of plays right into the Vikings' hands. The way Aaron Rodgers wants to handle the blitz is get rid of the ball. Dump it off to Jalen Warren, let him cook. Dump it off to a tight end, let that guy bowl somebody over and get 4 yards. That's exactly what the Vikings want you to do. That's who they want you to be. I was talking to Chris about this on the crossover yesterday, and in the whiteboard ideal, the front page thesis of the Flores defense, if you were going to write the doctorate, write the doctorate thesis about it, on the first couple of pages would be the principle: we want you to truncate your offense. We want you to be blitzed so much that you go to your blitz counters, which are, hey, when you get blitzed 4 times, if you're ready to handle it by flipping it up to a running back in the flat and then still being able to get some yards out of that, and you just basically parried the blitz, you're going to be happy with that. If we make you do that 55 times in a game, suddenly you are the Oregon Ducks and you can't move the ball. So if we can do that, if that's the way you're going to handle our blitzes, we're going to send the blitzes all the time. And there's been some struggles on that O-line, some health issues on that O-line, some pressure given up, and interestingly, the Steelers' offense has been better with Aaron Rodgers than the Jets' offense was, which is interesting because this is a much less QB-centric philosophy. I think that maybe is correct to do with a quarterback who is 41 years old, is not ask him to be the world beater anymore, right? Like the Jets asked him to play the way he could play when he was 33, and that kind of couldn't happen anymore, at least not consistently. The Steelers aren't really asking him to do that, and it's a much more successful formula. But if they're going to essentially dump the ball to tight ends and running backs all day long, the Vikings have practiced with that thesis in mind. They walk into practice, into camp, working it a lot, triggering downhill and making that tackle in the flat or making that tackle over the ball, making sure that there's no after catch. You can have that 5-yard completion, but you cannot make a whole offense out of that. Eventually it will falter. Even though you can get all the 5-yard completions you want, you are eventually going to try to push the ball. You're going to have a mistake. You're going to get a sack. It's going to be 2nd 15, and then that 5-yard completion won't be good enough. You're going to have to try something else, and it cascades from there. We've seen lots of 3rd and 25 kind of plays because of that. That's the whole thesis, right? That's the point of the Flores defense, and the Steelers are playing right into it. But the offense is just not downfield aggressive like you would expect with DK Metcalf, except for when they kind of force the issue and they go, okay, no, we're just going to call a deep one to DK and see what happens. And you have to be able to cover those. It's interesting. Defensively, here's what's interesting. They blitz a lot. They've actually blitzed more than Brian Flores. Brian Flores is 8th in blitz percentage right now. The Steelers are 3rd in blitz percentage. But in 2 or 3 games, they couldn't get pressure at all. This is all from True Media. Against the Seahawks, they didn't actually blitz very much. They blitzed like 7%. They did not want to blitz Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had over 3 seconds time to throw, and the defense totally fell apart. They basically let Sam Darnold cook back there and tried to beat him with coverage, and it didn't work. Versus the Jets, they do blitz, but Justin Fields actually got the ball out quickly really well and managed to move the ball pretty well. Versus the Patriots, they blitzed a ton. The Patriots failed to get the ball out quickly enough, and it all fell apart. The Patriots took a bunch of sacks, they had 5 turnovers themselves. So I think the idea is whatever it is, you have to get rid of the ball. I cannot imagine the Steelers walking into this game and not blitzing like they did versus the Seahawks. You've got a backup quarterback on the other side and an offensive line that has already given up, that's given up 12 sacks on the year already. Like, you have to try to generate that pressure. I would be stunned if they didn't blitz. So Carson Wentz has to get the ball out quickly. There's a bit of a concern there for me, because that means that this all shot play thing that Kevin O'Connell still does, even with Wentz, a little less with Wentz than he was with McCarthy. I think he has simplified and sort of taken the teeth out of his offense a lot for Wentz, which has in a backwards way worked, because I think some of that stuff was the problem. But and I do think that when JJ McCarthy is back, he's going to try to put that complex stuff back in, and we'll see if it works a little better later in the season. But for now, hopefully there's a little bit more of a basic look at things. If they are waiting for 20-yard routes to develop and trying to hold the ball for 4 seconds, that's just not going to work. I just think that there's too many Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. There's just too much talent, Nick Herbig, on that defensive line, not to mention all the blitzing. They're just going to put together too much pressure. So what do we think all of this is going to turn into? Well, you don't have to take my word for it. We can look at the public's word, which is pretty well represented by the betting lines. We'll look at FanDuel next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make a neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or that corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. For me, I'm an LA guy, so there's all these little hole-in-the-wall Mexican joints that no matter where I am in LA, I know where one is after I've been out here for a little bit of time. But for those of you in Minnesota, check out Mi Sant Banh Mi Company in Brooklyn Park. It's a sandwich joint in Brooklyn Park, and it's on Square. These are the kinds of places that make Minnesota, Minnesota, or make, for me, Los Angeles, Los Angeles, or wherever you live, give it its character. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million of these kinds of neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spots. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. This episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash has this weekly thing that we've been doing called the Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. For the Vikings, we will, of course, give the week's MVP award to Isaiah Rodgers, who delivers 2 touchdowns and another forced fumble and a pretty good pass breakup and some other great stuff to boot. Isaiah Rodgers gets every accolade in the world. He got slimed, he got player of the week, and he gets the Who Delivered weekly MVP powered by DoorDash. Just like Isaiah Rodgers delivered for the Vikings, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day, only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Moving along with the Locked On Vikings podcast, it's time to take a look at what the general public thinks about this Steelers game, and it is kind of confusing. Welcome to the Zoever Under. Here on the Zoever Under, we look at FanDuel's betting lines to see what the general public thinks about the game. This is not a betting segment where I'm going to tell you what props you should pick, what you should put in your parlay, or any of that. That's for you to decide. What I want to do is look at all these FanDuel lines, tell you what all the lines are. If you like anything, you're interested, go check it out. New customers get bet $5, and if you win, you get $300 in bonus bets. But rather, I think it's an interesting way to look at the public's opinion of the game. For example, the Vikings are favored by 2.5, and the money is leaning that way a little bit as well at -114. Steelers at +2.5 at -106. That's pretty even money, but it's just tilted ever so slightly to the Vikings. But essentially, that's the world thinking that a 2.5 point spread is appropriate. That this will be a game that should be fairly close, but on a neutral site, that they think the Vikings should be favored. Incredibly low numbers all across the board this week. The over-under is 40.5. So this implies something like a 21-18 or a 22-19 kind of game, with the Vikings winning. Something kind of ugly and low scoring. Not crazy low scoring like a Big Ten college game or something, but like something a little bit sloppier. And I guess that makes sense. You're probably going to have a wet surface. Neither of these offenses are exactly world beaters right now. And both of these teams have been propelled more by their defense than their offense. And so a low total makes a little bit of sense. But where you always want to start is with the passing props. So Carson Wentz's passing prop at 210.5 is actually above Aaron Rodgers' at 202.5. Both of those at -114. That's kind of crazy to me. Carson Wentz is a backup quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers' reputation across at least the media, the NFL media that I consume, the podcasts and shows I listen to and shows that I watch, everybody's saying Aaron Rodgers, hey, Aaron Rodgers is doing fine. Like nobody really thinks that he's like struggling on a 2-1 team or anything like that. And yet he has a passing total lower than a backup who most everybody agrees was kind of a passenger on a big blowout game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Hey, coming off a game where you got 48 on the scoreboard, a lot of people who do participate in this are just going to think, oh, the quarterback must have been awesome. But I do find it interesting. In terms of touchdowns, however, the over-under is set at 1.5, which it almost always is. Carson Wentz, though, has longer odds at +142, with Aaron Rodgers being at +116 instead. So while the passing yardage total is lower for Rodgers, the touchdown total is higher for Rodgers. I think that reflects some of the red zone stuff we were talking about with both Chris and in the first segment of this show, where, hey, face masker higher to Jonnu Smith or Darnell Washington or Pat Freiermuth or DK Metcalf. Like, get those four guys on the field, have them all run and see who the short guy covers and throw a fade to him. Like, surely this can't be that hard, right? On the other hand, too, if you look at the actual touchdown scorer props, if we're going to try to get a sense for like what everybody thinks is going to happen, the only one with minus odds is Jordan Mason. So part of that with the touchdowns is also people thinking that the Vikings are going to run the ball on the goal line and score rather than pass the ball on the goal line and score, which is probably borne out a little bit. I mean, they did get 2 great goal line touchdowns against the Bengals with Jordan Mason. Jaylen Warren is at +165 on the other hand as a red zone runner, which is kind of weird. Like, again, the Steelers want to be a run heavy team. They are one of the run heavier teams in the league. I think they're top 5 or close, maybe top 6 in run percentage. So they run the ball a lot. But for whatever reason, as a red zone rusher, there's not nearly as much confidence in the Steelers. In terms of other touchdown scorers, Justin Jefferson at +155, DK Metcalf at +150, and Jordan Addison at +250. And in fact, what Jordan Addison will do in this game in his return is something I haven't really talked about a lot at all on this show. But yes, Addison returns. He's been at practice. He's been doing his thing, and he is slated to make his return against the Steelers here. We did speak a little bit about it with Christopher Carter and the corners that they have. He had a lot of confidence in those corners, which is kind of funny because I go on the squad show and kind of relay that point. And I guess the perception for those guys is that they've been struggling a little bit, that, Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey have been made to look a little old. Joey Porter's hurt. Maybe these guys aren't the group. So we'll see what that is. As it stands right now, Jordan Addison's over-unders at 41.5. Jefferson's, of course, is the highest at 76.5. Metcalf's is at 50.5. Hawkinson is at 37.5, which is usually he's in the 40s, so that's a little bit lower of a total for him. And Naylor is at just 18.5, falling kind of out of the wayside as Addison returns to the offense. I don't even know. Thielen isn't even on here. I don't really know what's going to happen to Thielen at the end of this one. But if you do think Thielen will maybe find a way in the red zone, I believe you can grab that at plus 800. Right up there, tied with the Pittsburgh defense, which honestly at plus 800 kind of sounds good. Moving back to like the rushing game though, Jordan Mason again, 83.5 versus Jaylen Warren, who splits stuff with Kenneth Gainwell a little bit in this offense, but he's at 56.5. Kenneth Gainwell at 19.5. So these guys, even together, still don't add up to as much as people think the Vikings are going to run for. Generally, it seems like the expectation is that the Vikings are going to outproduce, outscore the Steelers ever so slightly, however, that the Steelers will have an advantage in the red zone. That could be the difference between an upset and not an upset. But what do the most important predictors in the world think is going to happen? It's time for my rabbits to pick. If you're watching on YouTube, you get to see it. If not, I will be as descriptive as possible. But basically, I have my rabbits pick every game. Zoe, the tan one, is the one with the psychic abilities. She's like well above 500, and we're in year 4 of this. Like we can't even call it a sample size thing anymore. So she's the clairvoyant one. We call her Zostradamus. And in this particular case, they were very asleep. They sleep with their eyes open, so you can't really tell. So it took them like a while for them to wake up and realize that there was something to eat in front of them. I kind of had to like tap on the plate a little bit, and then they both came beelining, and they both picked Pitt plus 2.5. Maybe they think that red zone idea is going to be the game changer in this one, or maybe they just don't believe that the Vikings pass rush can light up Aaron Rodgers like they kind of did against the Jets. We'll see how it is, and we'll see what happens in Ireland. You have some less reasonable things to say about it, though, and I cannot wait to get to all of your bold predictions next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Mazda, for those who are always looking for a little bit more. We do a lot of the details here on this show. We talk about little bits of your technique and where your hand, if it lands on the top of your shoulder or the bottom of your shoulder, the inside or your outside hand. All these little details matter so much. Mazda delivers with every ride that exact same attention to detail. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to their available Napa leather upholstery. Their all-wheel drive comes standard in every crossover SUV, so you can drive with confidence through no matter what the season is, and you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. That all comes down to the tiny little details, refusing to cut a corner and being meticulous about every little thing. Like NFL players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast. You guys took the history of Ireland so seriously. I usually never cut bold predictions that are like really fun ones that are like based on, the history of the region or whatever, especially when the Vikings go abroad and you can start talking about like Viking raids in the year 925. I had to do that, and I'm really sad about it. So if you thought you had a really great bold prediction and it doesn't get read here, just know I'm sad about it too, because I loved what you guys did. Dare I say this is the best week we've ever had of bold predictions. Can't wait to share it with you. The first one comes for, wait, we got to go to last week because someone hit. Sorry, I'm going to tease it more. Tim Peets said that Desmond Ridder would see the field. That didn't happen. Tush Pusher said that Brett Rippon would lead a game-winning drive. He did get in. Brett Rippon did get in. And a very bold prediction-y thing happened, which is that 4 former Viking quarterbacks all played in that game. Either former or current Viking quarterbacks all played. Tush Pusher, Orange, you glad I didn't say IR, said that Carson Wentz would outrush Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason had a great day. Pero Malo actually got close, said that the sum of Jefferson's and Chase's yards would be under 100. Chase did not cross 100, or this did not cross 100 until the twos came out. You got really close. I was watching that one really close. Shred said that it would be the shortest game of all time. That basically became impossible after that 7-minute delay for the virtual measurement. Ross said that every touchdown scorer in the game would be 25 years old or younger. You actually got closer than you think. However, the first touchdown scorer was Josh Oliver, which kind of ruined it. And then the 14-yard line that tackled Danny Dimes said that Carson Wentz would have 9.71 yards per attempt after 2 p.m. and beyond. I do not believe that happened. Also, Max Brosmer took most of the reps there. So I feel like spiritually we didn't get there anyways. But somebody who did get there, we did have another win, our second of the year. Sam Huseby, who said that Jefferson and Naylor would match or outproduce Chase and Higgins. Pretty bold prediction. This is one that I felt a little bit like I never would have taken in previous years, but we're trying to take a little more. I want more wins this year. I want to do more for you. So Sam Huseby, I know you're an everydayer because you're in the question docs all the time. So shoot me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com with the email that you want for your 3 free months of Patreon gift link. I think you might be a patron as well. So if you are already, you could give it to someone else or just get your next 3 months free or whatever. And tell me the charity you want me to donate $20 to. My word is my bond. Let's move on. Zach Davidson would be P1 and tight end 3 on the 2025 Vikings. Says Irish Steel Limited closed down in 2021. In the same year, the Vikings played an away game versus Pittsburgh. In that game, Dante Culpepper got injured and his backup Todd Bowden ended up throwing an 80-yard touchdown. In his honor, backup QB Carson Wentz will throw an 80-plus yard touchdown and shut down Irish Steel once more. I do think that shut down Irish Steel once more means that this needs to be coupled with the Vikings win. If there's an 80-yard touchdown in there, that feels like a pretty good shot. But we'll vibe that out afterwards because I feel like if you do get an 80-yard touchdown, I'm going to have a pretty tough time being like, no, because you said. I'm probably not going to do that. Owen says, in Super Bowl IX between the Vikings and Steelers running back Franco Harris outgained the entire Vikings offense en route to a 16-6 victory. Just last week, Isaiah Rodgers outscored the entire Bengals offense himself via fumble, return TD, and a pick six. This week, I think it goes even beyond that. My bold prediction is that one of the non-QB skill position players, Jefferson, Mason, Addison, Hockenson, etc., will not only outgain the entire Steelers offense, but also outscore them. This could be the result of a Brian Flores defensive masterclass or from one of the greatest single-game performances we've ever seen on offense. Either way, Aaron Rodgers will remain winless internationally, and the Vikings will move on to London in great spirits. I forgot that Aaron Rodgers has never won internationally. Is that really true, that he's never won internationally? I'm going to take your word for that, Owen, not look it up, because the Vikings are undefeated internationally, so if the Steelers win, it breaks 2 streaks. Minnesota Sports Appreciator says the first Vikings international game was in London in 2013 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. In that Week 4 matchup, the backup QB Matt Castle started for the injured Christian Ponder. Matt Castle threw for 248 yards, but 154 of them were after the catch. In the newest Vikings versus Steelers international battle, the backup QB will throw for under 100 air yards. That is a wild one. That's probably the boldest one yet. We are getting bolder. Connor says that in 2023, Jordan Addison was cited going 140 and a 55. To announce his return from suspension, he will have a 55-plus yard reception. And I decided that in that spirit, you probably need him to get 140 or more yards for this. I mean, you got to go with both numbers, man. You got to. So I'm adding that he's got to get more than 100, or he's got to get 140 or more yards. Tim Peets says that on average, it takes 7.5 hits to break a piñata. Aaron Rodgers will be sacked and tackled at least 7.5 times and will fumble at least once. I love that. He'll break like a piñata after 7.5 hits. That's a very cute one, Tim. You've been cooking this year. Great stuff all year. I did have the one from Christopher Carter that was that Darnell Washington would score 2 touchdowns. He gave me that on the crossover yesterday, so that one's also in play. And the last one comes from the 14-yard line that tackled Danny Dimes. I'm going to be honest with you, man. You're not all right. This is insane. He writes, while there is ongoing debate about whether Ireland or Scotland has a higher percentage of redheads, the claim that Ireland accounts for approximately 10% of the world's redheads is credible. For comparison, the United States has about 2% of the world's redheads. A common, albeit debunked, theory regarding the origin of red hair in Ireland is that it was introduced by Vikings. For the sake of this discussion, we'll assume this is true. Why is this relevant? While our Vikings may not be introducing red hair to Ireland, they will be introducing Ireland to the redhead, Carson Wentz. Drawing upon the strength of his fellow redheads, of which there are 5 times more in Ireland than the U.S., the Carson Wentz-led Vikings will defeat the Steelers by 5 scores. Goodness. Okay, so that all that comes out to is a 5-score win, but wow, you did so much research. You did so much homework for this. I hope you did it truly on company time. I will see you all on Sunday. I will not be a part of the squad show, but it will still go up on this feed. It'll be with Sam and Inman and Ron. We'll do the squad show after the game. I'll probably try to pop in there just a little bit, but I'm going to be like at the stadium. It's going to be kind of hard. And then I'll be doing podcasts from the road, from hotels and stuff all week long. So I hope you all enjoy that. I will see you all next week. And then we'll go all the way up through that to the Browns game, which I will also be at, but I'll be back stateside at about the middle of the week after that. So I hope that you all join, have a little fun. We're going to have a great time together. See you all next time. And as always, Skull.